think I've made it pretty plain by this point for anybody who watches my videos on a regular basis that I'm a Christian. And as a Christian, if I were to ask you who you thought I believed the most capable person to rule planet Earth was, I think the answer should be pretty simply, if you want to count him a person, God. And I think if you talk about God ruling a planet, you ought to talk about the physical form of that God, and therefore I would say the man, Jesus Christ, who claimed to be, and I believe is and was, God. Yet when he came to Earth, the last thing on his mind, in the standard typical sense, was ruling the planet. Now, I want to tie this into this idea of the subject of today's Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. By the way, I'm your host. I'm Kurt. It is Monday, the 26th of April, 2021. Welcome to everybody who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, or wherever you might be joining me. And the subject, again, is not the sword. And I want to tie in this idea of Jesus the Christ, the chosen one, not coming to earth and taking over. Okay? And I want to tie in some other things while I'm at it. But that one's pretty significant. I want to take a second to analyze a piece of scripture that I think a lot of people use to try and make Christians, Christianity, and the like into, quote, the sword, okay, the authority on planet Earth. But before I do that, I'm going to take just a second to take the time to kind of look at my notes. I think they were pretty simple today. I said, neither I nor the Christian church, or by any edict, any part of it, is the sword. Okay, let's take a look at this little piece of scripture. It's Romans 13, 3 through 5. And it says, and I'm going to put it up here so that you can see it on the screen. It says, For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good, But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. Now I want you to notice something about this. I'm going to leave it up for a second. And I want you to notice that it doesn't say you are a minister. It doesn't say the church is a minister. It doesn't talk about the church as a minister. It talks about the power, the one who has the power essentially. But it doesn't say that that's you. And I'm pretty convinced that it doesn't say that on purpose. It's not spelled out anywhere, and it's on purpose. You're not the power. Everything I know about what Jesus called Christ said to his disciples, his apostles, whatever they happen to be, everything I know said that you, if you choose to be a leader, will be the servant to all. So this idea of Christians being the leadership. Now, as I sort of thought about this, I kind of try to think about my stuff before I do it, obviously, right? So as I'm sitting thinking about this, or walking around thinking on it, or whatever it happened to be, I came to a piece of scripture that I think you could kind of use a little bit to work with the idea that certain Christians are called to be the sword. Okay, and it is, there's a piece of scripture, and I don't remember exactly where it is. I could find it, but I didn't actually do it. Probably should have. That says something along the lines of, whatever you were before you were saved, whether it was a slave, whether it was a legionnaire, centurion, whatever it was, be that thing. When you're saved, be that thing. I'm not sure that was intended to be exactly that way. But what I do know is this. In that time, you were appointed to a particular sort of an office, whether it was slave, whether it was master, whether it was legionnaire, whether it was centurion, whether it was Caesar, whatever it was, you were appointed or fought your way to a particular office, and you pretty much stayed in that place for your entire life. It was possible for you to be freed as a slave, but the point is, if you were a slave at the time you became a Christian, it was expected that you were going to remain one until such time as you were to be freed. These days, nobody in political office has to stay there. Very few people in the military are required to stay there. You have a contract term. Once your contract is term, there's nothing that is done. There's nothing that says you can't leave if you want to. Now, does that mean you have to? No, I don't suppose so. Same applies to elections or appointments in various positions. There is virtually no penalty for stepping down from those positions if you feel obliged so to do. Excuse me. I've said before, and I'm going to say again, when I became a Christian, I was in the military, the U.S. Air Force, to be specific. And there came a point in my life when I came to the conclusion I did not belong there anymore. Now, I can argue that a large part of the reason I left the military was my being a Christian, but there were some other things that, quote, got in the way. And I could go into detail on that, but I don't see the reason. Suffice it to say that they were unrelated directly to Christianity. Okay? But my point in all of this is the same. For Christians in general to be able to say, I am, as it were, the sword, is really, really questionable in my opinion. And considering what you're expected to do, in my view, considering Jesus saying, and Paul also saying things like, do well to those who despitefully use you, for in doing so you will be heaping coals of fire on their heads, which is not what I think a lot of people take it to mean, but nonetheless, that is to say, it doesn't mean literally or anything like that. It means that you actually will cause them to feel pangs of conscience that will hopefully act as a witness that makes it so that perhaps they will realize that Christianity is somewhere maybe they ought to be too. But that all having been said, the point of all of that is, bless those who curse you, do good to those who despitefully use you. All of this sort of language is not the language of leadership. There are lots of people who say, as a Christian, you're not supposed to be a doormat. But actually, yeah, you kind of sort of are. For your name, we are led as sheep to the slaughter all day long. What part of that makes you sound like you're not a doormat? You should be not a doormat, you should be a welcome mat. Paul was literally agreeing with the stoning of a Christian, right? More than one, almost certainly, holding the cloaks of those who were doing the stoning, right? Cheering along before he became a Christian as a result of various things, not the least of which being those same coals of fire being heaped on his own head. I can't easily come to a way, I certainly can't come to a way that the church should be the sword, the leadership, the authority. It's hard for me to come to a way that a Christian should be likewise. I'm sorry, I have a hard time with that idea. I just do. And if you don't, I wonder why not. I've had somebody promise to show me where I'm wrong about this, or not so much promise, but try to find where I'm wrong about this and show it to me. I'm pretty sure they're not going to be able to do it. I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. I just want you to know that. And that's not because I think myself so amazing or so wonderful. It's because in this point, I'm pretty sure of what it is that I'm saying. Christianity, as far as I can tell, is certainly not the sword. Christians are generically not the authority. And this is what I mean when I say not the sword. This is what I mean, right? All right. I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping this up because it's getting time to do that. So let me go ahead and call it good. I think you've come to the conclusion by this point that I do not believe Christians are in fact the sword, and I think you can understand why looking at the various things that I've said. This has been the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I am Kurt. Today is Monday, the 26th of April of 2021. Tomorrow will be Tuesday, the 27th of April of 2021. Welcome, and again, thank you for being here, for everybody on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, or anywhere else for being here. Remember that you can like what I say on YouTube if you see it there, and you can give me a positive rumble on Rumble if you happen to see it there. Tomorrow's subject will be impetus for change. I had it in my head what this was about earlier on. I've lost track of what that was. But it's an interesting, I'm really trying to do things that are meaningful and timeless. That's what I'm trying to do a lot on what I'm saying here. So hopefully you're having a good day. I know a lot of you, this is the start of your work week, yesterday having been the start of the week itself. And hopefully things are going well for you. And hopefully we will see you again on tomorrow's Daily Summation. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video was recorded on Monday, April 26th of 2021. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.